Chauvin, trial happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But I do have a live interview right now. Joining us is lawyer Susan Gaertner. She is closely following the trial in Minneapolis. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Pilar. Thanks.
So what have we seen so far this morning? We did air the proceedings here on NewsNOW from Fox.
Well, what we saw was somewhat unexpected, and that is that despite all of the uncertainty around what the charges actually will be that the jury will ultimately consider, despite that uncertainty, the jury selection's going forward. And I think there was some thought, and I include myself in that because of the open question about third-degree murder, whether it applies to this case, because that hasn't been decided, there was maybe a thought that the trial would get postponed. But as of this point, they're going forward.
Yeah, I was actually hearing that the jury is going to be virtual, like we're not going to get to actually see them.
The process will be that the jurors, one by one, will be actually in the courtroom, questioned by the judge and by the attorneys, but that their names will not be used and that their face, their visual, will not be available. It won't be broadcast to preserve the anonymity of the jury in a public respect.
So far out there in Minneapolis, we were showing live aerials of protests, George Floyd supporters, for lack of better terms. What has the mood been like out there?
I think there's been a fair amount of apprehension in Minneapolis generally about what to expect. There certainly is an atmosphere of the government center being a fortress at this point. Instead of the center of government where people come and go about their business. There's a fair amount of police presence in downtown Minneapolis, but at least so far, it seems as if the mood outside, from what I'm hearing, has been respectful and orderly and emotional, of course, but certainly peaceful.
They are currently in a recess right now. We're seeing the seal of the courtroom. What's happening right now?
Right now, there's discussions being had, what to do next, how to go forward. There's some of the mechanics of the first day of trial. Jurors are told to be at the courthouse at a certain time, but then they need to be brought through an orientation process that all jurors, no matter what kind of case it is, no matter how serious, are instructed about the jury process, what their responsibilities are as jurors. And so after that education process happens, which is presumably going on right now, then the actual jury selection process in this case will begin.
How do you think the jury selection process will be? How do we choose unbiased people in a case such as high profile as the George Floyd?
Jury selection is going to be enormously challenging. I don't think anyone would argue that it will be easy to find jurors who are open-minded about this case, who have not been so influenced one way or the other by what's gone on in the media, by what's gone on in the streets of Minneapolis. The challenge will be to find jurors who can put that aside and just decide the case based on what they hear in the courtroom, the evidence, the law that the judge instructs them on, and to give both sides a fair hearing is what the challenge is, to find 12 of those jurors plus 4 alternates, and it's not going to be easy.
As a lawyer in Minneapolis, why are you so closely following this trial?
Well, I think a lot of people, whether they're lawyers or not, are following this closely because of the social implications of what's happened, not only what happened to George Floyd, but the conversations that have happened afterwards in every aspect really of our society. I am a former prosecutor myself. I was the elected DA in the neighboring jurisdiction for 16 years. So, and now I'm a criminal defense attorney, so I probably have a little more interest as it goes on. But again, everybody's watching this trial.
How long do you expect this trial to go on, if you had to guess?
Oh, they plan on at least 3 weeks of jury selection, and then the evidence itself, 2 to 4 weeks is what's precise as I would be.
Yeah, and actually, I'm looking on Fox 9 Minneapolis's website about the article here, everything about the trial, and I'm actually reading there's no special COVID-19 vaccines for the trial. The governor out there turned down a request to vaccinate everyone in the courtroom. Have you heard anything about that?
I have not, but certainly what I have heard and what I've thought about a lot is how COVID may affect this trial. So much has gone into preparing for it, making sure that the streets are safe, but at the same time, peaceful demonstrators can exercise their First Amendment rights. There's just been a lot going on. A lot has gone into this. And so COVID is another layer there of complication. You don't want in the middle of a trial with this kind of expenditure of resources and community interest to be disrupted by a juror or court participant who gets sick with COVID.
Yeah, you're actually making some very valid points here. And I'm also reading that masks can be removed when giving testimony, examining witnesses, giving opening statements or closing arguments, and attorneys must conduct all witness examinations and arguments from the lectern. As somebody who has been in plenty of courtrooms, can you please elaborate how important it is to be able to see people's facial expressions while also watching them as they speak?
Well, that's certainly important in a trial. It's important in life. I think that we all look to non-visual cues, non-verbal cues in terms of evaluating what we're hearing from a person, trying to read that person. You know, how valid those non-verbal cues are is an open question. But in our day-to-day life, we rely on them to get a sense of, is this person being straight with me? Am I hearing what I need to hear? How are they, what are their emotions as they're talking about whatever they're talking about? Certainly that's a part of a trial as well. So the fact that at least when witnesses are testifying, they'll be able to remove their masks, I think is critical. I think it's important for the jurors to be able to hear the lawyers as they talk, as they ask questions, as they give their arguments. And so that exception to the mask rule, I think, makes a whole lot of sense.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell me about this trial, what we can expect today or going forward?
I think you can expect the unexpected. Like with any trial, you never know what's going to happen. But with this case, and particularly given the uncertainty around the third-degree murder charge, which is where all the argument is focused on in terms of the law, I think that the next few weeks, I wouldn't predict how they'll play out.
All right. Susan Gaertner joining us live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Thank you so much for being here on NewsNOW from Fox.
Thank you. Bye now.
Most of you are going to see it.